I heard a wise phrase once from a man that said, "You may think you've been buried, but you've actually just been planted." This phrase has brought some consolation in a lot of times in my life when I've definitely felt like all four walls are caving in on me. I fall into a bit of a fearful, scarcity, survival kind of mindset, and I'm unable to zoom out and recognize that everything in life has duality. Every blessing is a curse, and every curse is, likewise a blessing. It is possible to have two truths held simultaneously, and often we have just a particularly lopsided perception towards things that happen to us and fail to see the side of how things may happen for us. As a backstory, some of you may not know, and I thought it'd probably be right to share a little bit more about me on this journey of documentation and sharing a lot more on this platform. Where things really kicked off relating to content and building a personal brand, having a bit of an unconventional career, was way back in 2019. I was in my 5th year of working in the operations team, specifically driver operations team of Uber Australia and New Zealand. It was my first role out of university after zigging and zagging, I should say, away from the traditional corporate path I was lined up to be. I was set up to be the poster boy for commerce, valedictorian, president of the Commerce Student Society, blah, blah, blah. I don't say any of this to flex. I actually say this hopefully to liberate you and to make you realize that you have full permission to drop any old identities that aren't serving you or aren't a real reflection of who you are. And I zagged away into working at this borderline illegal startup called Uber in 2015. And so after an incredible start to my career, traveling, launching most cities, meeting some of the sharpest people I've probably ever met and ever will, literally being on the front seat of this meteoric growth of this global startup that was part of, I think, the wave of Silicon Valley tech in the 2010s, showing what was possible. I was starting to hit a plateau. Maybe it was a moment of crisis or a crisis of confidence, where I was starting to question what was my actual trajectory in the company. I'd learned and had to have worn so many hats and adapted with so many skills that were useful. But when I looked at probably the trajectory I was being kind of funneled or groomed into as a product manager, potentially to move overseas, I was quickly cluing in that of the other product managers that at least I'd interacted with, or what I saw of their lifestyle and their responsibilities, being involved in navigating politics for promotions, having many direct reports, feel like it was at times probably adult daycare where you're just looking after teams. I realized that my best self does not thrive under those circumstances, and there's nothing wrong on that. We actually need, and shout out to fantastic managers and leaders in organizations that have a natural proclivity in those areas. I think I just realized that was not what I was all about. My area of mastery is being a connector, literally and technically. I love connecting people, situations, bringing events together online and offline, but quite literally a connector with systems, backends, automations. I geek out with all of my tech, with how to be more efficient with workflows and how to make fantastic experiences for customers and clients, as that was really an embodiment of what I most enjoyed while I was at Uber. So during the season, when I was 2019, my previous manager that I'd loved working with, he actually just left to take a leadership role in a company that was ideal for him. It was such a great move for him, but I was probably a little bit just checked out at this point. Maybe I need to hear the signs from the universe. Over this period, I'd started a hobby of creating content online, and I was self-taught through YouTube and just a crusty, dusty iPhone 6, where I was emulating many of the travel influencers that were popularizing, those consumer entry-level drones from DJI, color grading the shit out of all of their content and making everything look dreamy and cinematic with a Lumifade and a cinematic teal and blue LUT. So massive kudos to Sam Calder, Matty Hapoya, who else is there? Dan Schiffers. Man, honestly, there's so many I could rattle off if I just looked at my YouTube subscriptions. They have all played a part in my lust for storytelling. So while I was starting to share my work and post it online, giving my close friends a sense of what I do outside of work, I was often documenting just trips, music festivals and adventures I do with friends and family, and then cutting them up into a bit of a punchy punchy, like digestible video, because you may be guilty of having bought a GoPro or telling yourself that you're going to document your entire Europe trip and put it on YouTube and cut it up eventually, only to come home with hours of footage that are raw, terrible, and you can't be bothered cracking open that timeline. I was that one friend that was willing to persist and turn it into something really thoughtful and well crafted. And I love showing them with friends as a bit of a time capsule recap of what we went through. So as a result, a friend of mine, in fact, actually my housemate, saw a travel company called Busabout post a competition on social saying that they were looking for a couple of content creators to win the dream job, an all expenses paid trip where all you had to do was manage and post content daily on their Instagram account, and in return you'd get an all expenses paid, like anywhere from 4 to 11 week trips across 3 of the locations in the world. The longest trip was Europe for 11 weeks, and I was low key like, when I was like speculating and trying to figure out if I was ideal for it, I was like, man, I'd really love that one. I'd really love to spend some more time in Europe, and be such an awesome run to be able to document it. They were going to select a total of 6 winners. They'd make 3 pairs, and they'd send each pair to a different part of the world to create content. I think one was America, another one was Southeast Asia, and as I said, the other one was Europe. Long story short, I submitted a 1-minute video entry of my time in Sydney. I was meant to showcase the city, but kind of with that like fun, friendly, getaway kind of like travel vibe, but more optimized for social media. So I literally funneled everything I'd learned from years worth of trying to emulate all the greats on YouTube, injected tons of my personality. I remember I went out on an entire all-day Saturday and drove around Sydney recording and vlogging myself. Sometimes you just need to have that crazy delusion, that I don't give a fuck energy, because I know that for most people, just the resistance and friction alone of putting a video out or recording yourself in public stops them from doing things. But I think maybe the pain of staying the same was greater than the pain of change. And what I mean by that is resuming this role and this job that I'd had and holding on this identity that was potentially no longer serving me was more painful than me driving across Sydney and doing hundreds of takes and recording myself and trying to fly my drone in areas where there was like, it was okay to fly drones because there were a lot of, no-fly zones. And I spent all day Sunday, I remember, straight after editing that video, had a final draft end of day Sunday, sent it to my girlfriend, another friend, a housemate of mine. And then by Monday, I'd had the final revisions and submitted it. I think it was due like end of day Monday. And there was something about the energy I had in the way that I submitted it it was something different. I don't know, you ever get that tingle, those butterflies in your belly that you're really onto something? It could be like a person that you meet, a piece of art or content that you create, a submission you have, maybe you're an academic or you're working in corporate, and there's just a different kind of energy. And it's not like arrogance, it's like, man, it's like this life force just lights up inside of you and you get hairs at the back of your neck standing out. And I think by the time I'd submitted this piece of work or art, I just had this really good feeling. I saw some of the submissions that were already starting to come on YouTube that people were tagging the brand in, and they were shot on these like beautiful cinematic $3,000-$4,000 cameras with lenses and multiple shots, and they must have used multiple people, really planned it out. I kind of look like this scrappy vlog, but somehow I was like, I just put a certain something into this video that I think is going to cut through everyone else and all the rest of the noise. A couple of weeks later, I was in a lot of suspense, especially when my performance at work was really dropping off. The conversations with my manager definitely started nearing the performance plan range. The lights were on, but no one was really home and I wasn't bringing my best there. And maybe because of the submission of the video, maybe because of what I put into that energy, I kind of was so confident that was potentially my way out. Well, thank goodness I had that much conviction about myself, because I found out that I was selected as one of the winners, and I was paired up with another legend called Daniel, and we would be going to Europe, the longest trip, to capture content. I was like absolutely over the moon, like absolutely ecstatic for this. So selected as a winner, and now with my exit strategy from Uber, I handed in my resignation, and much to the surprise of many colleagues and many others, they questioned what was I doing, did I have a guaranteed job, and why was I leaving such a prestigious role in a company like Uber. I asked myself those same questions, and probably looking back was a bit disappointed or frustrated that was like the initial response. Now with wisdom, I understand that was many people just projecting their own fears and insecurities onto me, because they were trying to fathom that if they're in my same position, why would they do the same thing? So out of all of that though, there were really only 2 people, maybe 3 people that really were like in my corner, geeing me up, like rooting for me and saying like, absolutely F yes, Mamba, like this opportunity is so aligned for you. You need to go spread your wings, go make it happen. 2 of them were colleagues at work who, you know, funnily enough, in the next year or so, they both also had left respectively, and I'm still very good friends with them to this day. They were kind of the left of center zigging zaggers in my life who I love so much. And the other one was my dad. Dad, for many years, I didn't realize had probably been either suppressing or didn't really have the chance to express a creative itch he'd had his entire life. Born in Uganda, a very, very smart, hardworking young man, one of a family of 7 siblings. I didn't realize until years later when some of his friends shared some notes about him as we were preparing his eulogy that not only did he ace everything he did in high school, but he was also an avid and big enthusiast and member of the photography club, which photography in like what would have been the 1970s in Uganda. I don't know what film they would have been shooting on, what that would have even looked like, but it all made sense. Because in the 90s when Sony entered the market, or Sony started introducing their family hand cams, those big chunky bricks that your dad would bring out to like concerts and family vacations and family events, Dad had a handful of those and recorded everything. Concerts, award nights, basketball grand finals, you name it. Dad had captured it all. And I probably didn't appreciate it at the time because I thought everyone's dad did that, or I thought everyone's family had that. And I now realize, looking back, that was my dad's ability to express that lifelong interest in storytelling, I would assume, capturing things digitally, capturing moments. Never really expressed it, he just showed it through his actions. So Dad, in those final weeks of my time at Uber, had actually been prompted by one of my good friends to record a farewell video for me. And so my family, they sat down, they did a video, lots of other close friends in my life. This wonderful colleague of mine, he's a certified champion, rounded up all those nearest and dearest in my life. And in this video, which my mum and my sisters were a part of, my dad shared something along the lines of saying, you know what, because I can, I'll just play the video right now and I'll share his exact words.
You are such a champion, a maverick, and a legend, and an inspiration to everybody. We are so proud of you as the Odoi family, and for what you have achieved so far in life, and what life has got for you in future. We give you all our full support, and go for it.
That video ended up being one of the last recorded moments of my dad on camera. And if it wasn't for the initiative of my wonderful colleague, I never would have had this clip to even share with you and to look back and hold and cherish. After resigning from Uber, I spent a week down in Melbourne with my mum and dad, and little sister as well, who was living at home, just to kind of sort my life out. I moved out of Sydney, obviously, and in the process, my dad had kindly flown up to Sydney, helped me move everything out of my apartment into a moving van, and we drove down to Melbourne together on a multi-day father and son road trip, which, as I mentioned over the video, it was also the last time I'd spent that much of a significant time with my dad one-on-one. I never knew it was going to be the case. Something about that road trip had just brought out so many conversations and so many deep and meaningful, raw revelations that I never heard from Dad before. I think maybe growing up, we never really had the time for those, or maybe I wasn't mature enough to hold conversation, or maybe I just didn't have the confidence to ponder and ask about some of these things in Dad's life. So by the end of the trip, I felt like I'd had a whole new outlook on who he was and things he wished he did better and differently, and even advice that he'd offered me on how to think about my relationship. At that point, I'd been dating my partner for a couple of years, and I felt like I'd constantly had failure and short-term relationships and nothing that really ever lasted and stood the test of time. So that was a really, really special road trip with lots of laughs and gags along the way. Dad ended up being the one that dropped me off at the airport before I went over to experience the European summer. So I think that was around July 2019. He'd first dropped me off at Melbourne Airport, where I'd fly to Brisbane. I'd spend about a week there, or a weekend, I think, with my partner before flying off internationally. And the trip was, the final trip to the airport was in good spirit. Dad was really excited for me, and as he pulled my bags out at the terminal, or not at the terminal, just at the car park, he gave me a big hug and he said, "I can't wait for you to come back and to tell me all the stories of your adventures." That was always what I what I love the most about going on trips. Dad genuinely just loved hearing and retelling stories. Whether it was childhood books that we'd reread 1,000 times and we'd laugh at the exact same moment, at the exact same sentence, the exact same diagram, or stories from our time camping on father and son trips, family holidays, and just iconic moments. It was really just cherishing and relishing all these moments that you would otherwise just let slip. And in a time when, you know, you didn't have the ability to just capture, edit, record, and publish all of your content and store it, my dad found the way that he would keep stories and memories and just experiences alive was just through retelling. And so I went overseas. The trip was a dream, as described. It was quite literally a dream job. Once I then connected with my partner in crime, Daniel, for the content trip in Amsterdam, I just knew we were going to get on like a house on fire. We'd grown up watching the same content on YouTube. We're inspired by the same editing styles. We all love the same music, and having the Aussie sense of humor was, you know, going to absolutely be electric when we started doing, you know, daily stories and daily content. And that's exactly what happened. The team at Buzzsprout loved us. The audience loved us. We loved what we were doing, and even with the groups we were constantly traveling with and meeting, we always just had this big bubble of energy and just welcomed everyone in and had some remarkable experiences, saw some amazing things. And so just a few days before my 26th birthday and in transit to Albania, it was the 19th of August 2019, and I didn't have an eSIM, so I didn't have data, I think, between all the locations we were in. Or at least sometimes the buses we were on did have Wi-Fi, but I think on this particular day we didn't have it. I was a little bit dusty from the night before. And I pulled up at some random petrol station in the middle of nowhere, en route to our next stop. And as soon as I connected to the Wi-Fi that was in the petrol station, the complimentary Wi-Fi, my phone blew up. 10, 15 missed calls, messages, and none of them said what the actual message was about. They just said, message me or call me back as soon as you see this. Multiple from my older sister, multiple from my mum. And you know when you just have the inverse of what I mentioned earlier? Sometimes you have a moment of magic when you feel something's remarkable, and as I said, you get that moment of inspiration and the hairs on the back of your neck stood up. This is the pure antithesis, or the pure inverse of whatever that feeling is to be experienced. My gut went backwards, my gut went inwards. It's like gravity went 180 and the whole scene, or my whole life, just suddenly went black and white. Time slowed down and I couldn't even catch my breath in this moment. So I called and had the phone picked up by my older sister, but she didn't speak straight away, at least this is what I remember. And I just heard the heart-wrenching howling of my mum crying in a way that I'd never heard before. Like, I'd never really even seen mum cry, but this was a different kind of one. It was painful. It was that life-changing moment when you hear about it, or you hear others go through it, you see it in movies, but you kind of don't expect it's going to happen to you. And I think that's what really was the shell shock of it. Not that I didn't think it wasn't going to happen one day, I just didn't think it was going to happen the way that it did. And so I'd found out that Dad, at 61, with no warning, had had a sudden heart attack, like an arrhythmia. He'd woken up in, maybe 5, 6 o'clock local time in Melbourne, and he'd gone to the bathroom, and Mum just heard and saw him coming back, breathing heavy, wheezing, and just collapsed on the bed. The paramedics came out and they treated him, or tried to treat him for, I think for what I heard was more than 30, 40, 50 minutes, which is typically unheard of. But it's unheard of for them to do that, because having a heart attack of this nature, that hard, is unheard of. Not to say Dad was young, but he also wasn't old, 61. And so I think I had a lot of peace knowing that they absolutely tried their best. But just like that, if there's any consolations that he didn't suffer, but he was gone. And I didn't find out until 8 hours after the fact because of time zones. I had slept overnight, woken up, didn't have Wi-Fi connection, and so it wasn't until I was in this petrol station I found out. So for my poor family, I was now the last to find out from our immediate circle. and just hearing my family have to go through and talk through it all again was challenging. It was tough. Even harder was being on the other side of the world and having no idea how to take the next best step or what it even was at that point. Logically, it's obviously to come back home, but yeah, in that moment, you are paralyzed. And I'm eternally grateful that I was with Daniel, who, it's like I nearly didn't even have to say the words to him. He just could read it in my body language after I came off this phone, and he just held me. I don't know how long it was, and he just gave me the warmth and support and the grounding I needed in that moment. So after feeling like I was in true shell shock for those 24 hours and just going through motions, feeling like everything was black and white, letting the travel company know that I wasn't able to continue with the trip, booking an emergency flight, calling my insurance company, and just handing over all my remaining content, which I remember Dan at the time said, "I can't believe you're still doing all this content stuff." And I said, "I actually don't even know what else to do in this moment. I feel the best I can do is leave you to succeed without me and set up all the content and just it would take my mind off the inevitable reality that was waiting for me at home, and it was just something that I could pour myself into." So I left that trip. I left my final pieces of content on social. I didn't really, allude to exactly what had happened, but those who knew or those who needed to know knew. I was on my way home back to Australia. And that is what kicked off, one of the most tormenting and challenging periods of my life. To make matters a little bit trickier, on the 19th of August as well, I received a notification from the ATO that my lodging or ESS payroll from the previous year had been submitted, and an estimate of my tax owing had also come through. And I don't know what it is about the number 19, but on the 19th of August of 2019, my dad had passed away, and I'd also found I was in just under $19,000 worth of debt. That's another story, but let's just say it relates to the early equity that I had I'd received as a result of working at Uber. Like I opened with, I said, life can often feel like you're buried, and you have every reason to say, why is this happening to me? What have I done to deserve this? And in the thick of the moment, to be honest, I don't think there were any words that really could have consoled me. I would do anything in a million years to have him back and to have him keep being here with us. And instead what I'm doing is I've just pulled up at the cemetery, the memorial park where Dad's tombstone is, and we're going to spend some time just sitting, hanging out with him, and just feeling him in. But the irony is, it's like, if I would just only know how much growth, how much my family, all those around me would thrive and rise as a result of what we thought was the worst thing that ever happened to us. Ironically, it also was one of the best things that ever happened to us. There's no way in that moment you could possibly know it. I wish I had the level of a transcendent monk to be able to see it in that moment. I think that's true wisdom. But that's why I go and I spend time with Dad every time I'm down here in Melbourne. Because I'm here to honor him and honor what he left me with and the catalyst that he set off in my life that made me the man that I am today and the man that I'm becoming as well. He put me on a trajectory that I never would have been on before. I was already doing things right and I was already ticking boxes and kicking a few goals, but it just kicked something off in me that I'd never had before. And I think that is the real beauty of why we have death, why nature has so beautifully designed birth and death. Life would have no urgency, life would have no flavor, life and all of us within it would have no real reason or appreciation for why we are here. And I struggle still to this day that Dad had only 61 years on this planet, but I'm grateful that he had 61 and I had 26 with him. And he's still here, he's just in a different form. And all those before us and all those after us, it's this infinite game, and I can't really explain it. It's well beyond the capabilities or the IQ of my tiny, humble little brain. But yeah, it's all part of a bigger picture that we might not be able to comprehend. So I just wanted to say, if you're still listening at this point and you've learned a little bit more about me, and why I am who I am and why I do what I do and I live as I do, I hope that adds a little bit more color to the messy, complicated makeup of who I am, but also appreciating that each and every one of us are carrying scars and challenges that none of us really understand. And so I hope that just by sharing mine today, you can embrace yours and understand that some of the worst things that ever happened to you are probably the best things that ever happened for you. And to Dad, the OG maverick and the pioneer in my life, I love you more than you could ever know, and it has grown fonder and deeper in all these years. I really do live and carry your spirit in all that I do, and you're the very reason I am exactly who I am, and I'm even sitting here recording a video like this, sharing with some beautiful friends all over the world. So much love to you, my friend, and if you've made it to the end of this one, I appreciate you. If anything resonated, anything struck a chord, feel free to let me know or reach out at any point. But yeah, that's the video for this week. I'll see you soon.